and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge. We've had some insights since our last guest episode into some exposed form courtesy of the official preseason matches. And of course, it hasn't come without its curveballs with popular primos in Bontempelli, Butters, Goulden, among a host of players that are SuperCoach relevant that have gone down with injuries, unfortunately. So it will mean that we need to pivot to alternative options. And among those could be some juicy mid-prices, which is what we'll be discussing in today's episode. So very, very relevant. Of course, if you haven't followed us on our socials, feel free to do so via YouTube. All you need to do is simply search SuperCoach Edge. Don't forget, of course, to like and subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified of when our content does drop. Spotify, Apple Pods, you can listen to us, and don't forget to give us, a rating if you have a bit of time up your sleeve, and give a review as well. Twitter, you can search us at supercoach_edge. You can find myself at DamoJ88 and Liam at LiamEvans_95. Facebook, Insta, and TikTok, SuperCoach Edge. Search that and you'll find us there. Now, I am riding solo today once again, but Liam is recovering well. I have heard firsthand and doing some bit of research as well. You would have seen on socials at the moment that Liam has been putting his downtime to good use, or his recovery time for his ACL recovery in putting out recaps of the official preseason matches. So make sure to go there and check that out. Incredible stats that he has compiled there. All in one spot. You can go through and just helps you with your research, of course. But let's kick things off on all things mid-prices with someone who has been a bit of a mascot, I think, of SuperCoach Edge in recent seasons, and he is back. We will announce it. We will go premature. We'll say that because we are very, very excited. It is the man himself, the pink sweaty pig in Clary Oliver. He's priced at 451.6k, and 2024 average wasn't the best. As we know, past couple of seasons have been kind of a bit of a write-off, 83.8. And in terms of the buys, he has the round 15 buy. Ownership at the moment is 58.4%, but I do expect that to rise off the back of promising performances across the preseason and in that official preseason game. So I think I probably would have laughed you out of the room if you said that Clary would be sub 500k last year. But here we are in 2025, and you can get Clary for just over 450k. Now, it's bargain bin pricing for a guy who has consistently been a SuperCoach machine. As we always say, snout and trough type stuff with Clary. He is the pink sweaty pig for a reason, but just incredible to see him back. We saw him with the average of 83.8 last season, as I mentioned, which isn't exactly what we expect from the man who exudes the SuperCoach pig juice, as we affectionately refer to here on SuperCoach Edge. And let's not forget, we don't call him the pink sweaty pig, as I mentioned, for nothing. He has his snout in the trough, digging out the hard ball and feasting on points. And Clary has been the picture of consistency across most of his career, dating back to 2017, where he had 111.5 and upwards from there, 114.7, 109.4, 122.2, 123.5, 127.1, and 2023, 120.6. So he is just an incredible prospect, as we know. And if he can get back to previous averages of, 110 plus, even 105 plus, given his current price point, he's going to be an instant win. So the upside here for Clary is absolutely massive. And as for how he performed in the official practice game against Freo, he casually top scored with 134 consisting of 28 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles, and also, a bit handy, 3 goals, 1 as well. So as I said from the top, the pig is back. We're happy to say that, and is I think, to put it lightly, a must-have. In terms of verdicts, well, it kind of speaks for itself, but I will say that I am, once again, so keen to crack open a fresh can of pig juice and guzzle down his massive scores. All is right in the SuperCoach world when you know that we can do this once again, and it looks like we will with good old Clary. As for Liam, he has written that he is a must-pick for him as well, and the potential upside here is just too juicy to pass up. And you could end up with one of the bargains of the season. So summarised nicely there by Liam, and totally agree. Let's move on to another player who is, I think, quite great value. I was going to say good value. I think he's great value. Adam Cerra, 447.7k. 2024 average was down, 83.1, for good reason, which I'll get into in a moment. Buys has the round 12 buy, and his ownership at the moment is 9%, which I again think probably will go up, and I'm surprised it's actually not more than that. Cerra's 2024 season was plagued by injury, causing his average to drop to just that 83.1 and start at a bargain basement price point in 2025. This average is obviously well below his usual numbers, where he averaged 108.3 in 2023, along with 91.6, 90.1, and 90.2 dating all the way back to 2020. So what are we hoping for here? Well, we are hoping that CERRA can get back to that 90-plus average and actually make us some cash as well, alongside some decent scoring. So, as I mentioned, injury was a major factor in his average dip, having re-injured his hamstring multiple times across 2024. And as a Carlton man, it did send shivers up my spine. Every single time I saw him hobbling off field, I was like, is that hamstring again? And it ended up being that multiple times, which was very concerning. But he did have some treatment in the off-season, and by all reports, is back to his best, which, as we saw in the official preseason game proper as well, that kind of vindicated things as well, which I'll get into in a moment. But second to, I guess, the dip, the reasoning behind his dip in average is the fact that Crazy Vossi kind of had a bit of a Bevo moment, I think, where he randomly shifted CERRA to half back. And let's be honest, he didn't go great. I mean, as a Carlton supporter, it actually made me pretty angry seeing that, because he persisted with it over, I think it was about 3 weeks. And I don't know what he was trying to do. And it was kind of at a point in the season where you didn't really want to experiment with, players in their non-traditional positions. So I don't know what he was trying to do. I know we were kind of struck down by injury and stuff, but it's safe to say on a SuperCoach sense, it didn't work out either, because he only scored 74, 65, and 38. But when he did actually spend more than 50% of his time in the engine room with CBAs, he averaged just under 91. So again, back to that average that he was able to get across the past, 3-4 seasons, which is good to see. And thankfully, that Frankenstein experiment from Vossi was fleeting and has finished, thank the Lord, as he now returns back to the engine room proper. At this price, you're obviously rolling the dice. There's no two ways about it. But unlike other players who present at a bargain price point with the hope that they can potentially, step up their average into scoring areas that they haven't really ventured once, before, the difference with CERRA is he is a proven scorer historically, as evidenced by that 91.6, 90.1, and 90.2 averages dating back to 2020. And if he gets injured once again or doesn't step up, you'll be left, Liam's written here, holding the bag, so to speak, given his price point. But with best 18 across the opening rounds and the safety net of the flex position to largely, mitigate the risk, he instead becomes a calculated risk. And let's not forget the favourable matchups as well for Carlton in starting the season with Richmond, North Melbourne, and the Eagles within the 6 rounds that they are facing. So really, really good opportunity for CERRA to start the season well. And I guess, catapult his price point up towards, those primo territories that we can potentially cash him in and, ride him as a bit of a nice sort of a mid-price cash cow, we might call him, a bit of a hybrid here. And just to finish here, what we saw in the official preseason game from CERRA against the Giants was a very promising insight, with bulk CBAs and a score of 108 from just 57% game time, which meant that he scored at 1.46 points per minute, which is absolutely elite. Obviously being managed for game time, it's not a proper game. They are conscious of the fact that he is returning from those hamstring injuries. So it's just more so the fact that they're trying to get a bit of load into his legs without overdoing it. So it's all about, game time management for him and getting load management sort of built into his, preseason. So no real concern there for me. And just, segueing here into my verdict, despite these injury troubles, which I know very well as a blue bagger, I think he is a calculated risk. And what I saw of him and the way that he moved against the Giants did give me that confidence that I needed to really pick him. I did a bit of a chat with Janeth, which you might have seen on the Swordplay podcast. Great chat with fellow bagger and Janeth. And we both dissected, the ins and outs of picking CERRA, the pros and cons. At that stage, I was kind of on the fence, whereas with Janeth, he was kind of more for CERRA. And doing a bit more research, having seen him as well, which I kind of mentioned in that chat with Janeth, that I needed to see him and the way that he moved in the official preseason game, how he lined up as well. And that would kind of give me a little bit more insight into whether or not I should pick him. And I think off the back of that, all things considered, he is a very, very nice bargain selection. Probably, I would say, almost on par with Oliver in my eyes, considering that he does have that scoring history behind him and he can, when fit, reach those heights once again, I have no doubt. So he is a lock and load for me. Let's move on to Will Ashcroft. He's priced at 441.2k. 2024 average was 81.9 and has the, I was going to say 2 buys, but in light of the news that has come out about the cyclone and the weather that has been, will be causing havoc on the coast there. And anyone tuning in from those areas, I hope that you are safe and you are preparing to move and shift if need be to ensure your safety. But it has come out that the AFL have abandoned that game for the Brisbane matchup, the first game at the Gabba. And no announcement as yet as to where it's going or when it's going to be played. But at this stage, it looks like it may be played in round 3, potentially. The Cats and the Lions, that was going to be their bye round. So we'll wait and see what happens there, but it does mean that they no longer have 2 bye rounds, which is obviously a good thing. So they'll only have the round 16 bye at the moment, which is good. Ownership for Will Ashcroft is 20.9% at the moment, but I could maybe expect to see that rise based upon how he performed in the official preseason game, which again I'll get into in a moment. But just in summarising Ashcroft for 2024, his, I guess, home and away season performances didn't really, set the world on fire. And, it's probably fair because he was returning from an ACL injury. But if you did watch how he finished the season, you should be paying attention to this guy as a potential selection, no doubt. His last 3 games of the season saw scores of 129, 92, and 115. And then he went into the finals he almost transformed into a bit of beast mode, I think, winning the Norm Smith and posting scores of 98, 113, 74, and 128 in the grand final. And that late season form, where he averaged 107 across the last 7 games, including finals, is enough to make you think, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right, or something is right in this case, because this guy is completely underpriced when you factor in his return to form in the late part of 2024. And based on that, you could argue he's one to watch in 2025, even if he has to share points among the likes of, what we'll refer to as the awesome foursome at the Lions in Neil, Dunkley, and McCluggage, and of course, Ashcroft among that mix as well. So the question is, is he underpriced? Absolutely. Will he maintain the scoring ceiling that I guess he captured in the back half of 2024? Well, that's the real question here. If you're stacking your team with top tier mids and need a budget option, Ashcroft's definitely a great shout. And he's entering his 3rd season as well, and on the verge, you would think, of stepping into potential primo status. An incredible performer, incredible youngster, generational talent that's coming through the ranks, and he is someone that you should consider. But having said all that, with so many quality mid rookies around in the around about that price point and even lower, along with the likes of mid-price gems in SHIEL and Oliver at a similar price point to Ashcroft, you might have to choose between multiple players in limited spots. So someone's going to have to make way. Is it Ashcroft? Maybe. You just have to weigh things up. And just mentioning as well that he returned the 4th highest score of 93 as well in the Lions' official preseason hit out against the Crows, which does suggest his late 2024 form may continue. So 93, pretty good. First up. And I think the knock on wood as well, injury issues, the troubles are behind him, and he's going to step up his game. And you'd think that, 81.9, injury affected or injury impacted, returning from that injury in 2024. If he can step up his average to a 90 to 95 plus, he's going to be great value at his current price point. For me, in terms of verdict, I unfortunately can't fit him into my midfield as much as I do want him. I did have him in my first iteration of my side, but as we said, with so much value and rookies on offer in the midfield, he just got squeezed out, unfortunately. So I do still anticipate that he'll average 90 plus minimum. And with that, does mean that he does become a solid pick. So I wish I could pick him. I could potentially go a bit one short and maybe downgrade a primo down to him and save a bit of cash and then, spread across the rest of my team. That's always an option. But I don't foresee Ashcroft becoming your keeper, and more so being someone that's going to be much like CERRA and maybe Oliver. Oliver probably more of a keeper because he has been a primo in the past, but definitely with CERRA, Ashcroft kind of fits into that mold of being a bit of a mid-price cash cow in a sense, a value option, a gem that you can use on field, obviously, to punch out those nice scores and ride his cash generation as well, to then, use him as a bit of a stepping stone to a genuine primo. So let's move on to the next guy, and it is Tom Powell, priced at 432k. 2024 average was 80.2 and has the round 12 bye. In terms of ownership, he is at a low 1.7%. And with Tom Powell, I think we will, classify him as a bit of a sneaky wild card. You might be thinking, why? Well, with the injury to Wardlaw, Powell suddenly finds himself with a golden opportunity to step up as a CBA midfielder almost permanently in 2025, or at least the first portion of the season. Last season with Powell, as we know, when he was given more than 50% CBAs, he averaged a decent 93, but when that dropped below 50% CBAs, he did plummet to 68.9 and played a bit more of a kind of a high half forward, pushing up to the wing, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the roller coaster ride that we're dealing with here. And a lot of us were all too familiar with that in 2024. We have seen Powell scoring fluctuate, and if he doesn't get the midfield minutes, as we know, he could end up a Supercoach ghost. But if he does get that CBA role, especially early on, he could be a real point of difference. In recent match simulations, he's been playing that CBA role, and that continued into the official preseason match against the Eagles with a score of 107 from 25 disposals and 1 goal, 1. At 1.7% ownership, if he does hit, it could be a game changer, saving you money to use elsewhere across your side as a bargain pick and using him as a stepping stone to a genuine primo. But if his selection turns out to be a miss, you might be left behind with a unwanted pod. So something to sort of weigh up. Price point there, similar to, last season, a lot of people jumped on him cheaper, and people jumped off him at around about this price point when he was dipping in CBAs and scoring output as well. So something to consider, but he is someone nonetheless to have a chat about. Moving on now to the next option, and it is Dylan SHIEL, priced at 413.7k. 2024 average was 76.8. And in terms of buys, again, things look as though they will change due to the weather impacting the opening round game for the Dons. So he did have buys in round 4 and round 16, but looks at this stage as though he will only have the round 16 buy. In terms of SHIEL, well, it's almost the second coming of Dylan SHIEL, as he's reinvented himself into a rebounding defender, courtesy of a position change across the preseason. In match sims, we saw some promise in his ability to get his hands on the ball and be used as that get-out rebounder, but the one thing holding him back is his poor disposal efficiency. This was evident in his preseason game proper, where he had 26 disposals and 7 marks, which sounds good in theory, but that just returned a score of only 62, which gives us flashbacks to those of us that owned Nick Martin last season. The other potential worry is SHIEL's lack of durability, having played 9, 12, 19, and 8 games across the previous 4 seasons. But admittedly, his low tally of games in 2024 was more due to being out of favour until he earned himself a reprieve in the senior side and averaged 84.9, of course discounting that one game where it was sub-affected. In terms of the verdict, for me, he does present greater risk than any of the value players that we have mentioned previously. Durability, being out of favour at 32 years of age, doesn't really scream pick me, let alone the unknowns of him playing in an entirely new position. And if his poor disposal does continue in the season proper, how long until Scott loses patience with him and throws him back into the VFL, given it seems as though he wants to phase him out of the engine room? So it hasn't really been any consideration for me at all. But I think it would be remiss of us to mention him, because there are people out there that would be keen on getting him into their team. And no surprise here that his ownership is only at 1%. So he is a genuine pod, and that's probably the other thing that counts against him. Being such an extreme pod, it does mean that if he fails, it's going to fail spectacularly, and it's going to have a massive impact on your team, being one of the limited number of owners of SHIEL. So for me, there's too much counting against him. I think in season, if it looks as though he is going to be an absolute breakout, you can always jump on him at this price point, pivot to him from someone else at a similar price point or at a higher price point potentially. But I think for me, he's someone that I am happy to pass up. Let's move on to James PEATLING, priced at 352.8k, 2024 average of 65.5 and has the round 15 buy. In terms of his ownership at the moment, it's at 12.9%, which I think is quite interesting. I thought it would be a little bit higher than that, but James Peatling made the move to the Crows from the Giants, and that in itself could mean more opportunity than he had at the Giants. But here's the real question. What exactly does that new role look like? Well, we've seen in the past that he has had a bit of a limited run in the midfield at the Giants, but when he does and has had a decent crack, he can be a very nice scorer. Peatling's numbers do show potential. When he averaged 40% plus CBAs, he was able to push close to a 90-point average, but when he stepped up to 50% CBAs, that jumped to 95.7 points. And that really is the kind of upward trajectory that makes you sit up and say, hello, value, because, we are looking for these guys at a value price point and do present very nice upside to, allow us to have a bit of coin to spread across the rest of our team with these value selections. So even if he does end up being that fourth string CBA midfielder at the Crows, he could still have a role in the midfield that's worth watching and potentially jumping on. At his price point, there's definite value here, even if it is a bit of a punt. The risk is low, but the reward could be very high if he steps up into that meaningful role in the Crows' engine room. And what we saw in the preseason game was promising enough without blowing us away, really, with a score of 70, which came from 21 disposals and 42% CBAs. For me, in terms of verdict, he is a lock in my side. Big correlation, as I said, between opportunity and scoring, and he'll get that in spades at the Crows, you would think. So he's someone that I am very, very bullish and excited about, so he is in my team. Let's shift on to the next candidate in Ollie Hollands from my mob, priced at 333.3k. Gee, loves those threes. 333, 3 for 333. 2024 average, 61.9, and does have the round 12 bye. Now, his ownership is at a relatively low 2.2%. I thought that might have been a little bit higher, but there are reasons as to why I think people have deviated away from Hollands. In short, Ollie Hollands could be the next Nick Martin, which does sound tantalising, but a little bit frustrating. So due to the unfortunate season-ending injury to Nick Newman, it has elevated the prospects of Ollie Hollands to step into that void and take over that mantle as one of the rebounders for Carlton. And we saw an uptick in his scoring when he did move back to that position in 2024. And if he can get some kick-ins in 2025, that could make him a much more intriguing SuperCoach prospect. The Blues do like to share the love with kick-ins, unfortunately, but last season they had three main takers. McGovern with an average of 27%, Newman with 25%, and Sard with 21%. So with Newman out, that leaves 25% of kick-ins up for grabs. So could Hollands potentially snatch those? And if so, we could see his scoring rise even further, especially if his disposal efficiency does hold up. And that's a key point here when it comes to disposal efficiency. I think I can tell you firsthand as a Carlton supporter, that's probably one thing that can let him down at times, especially when pressure is applied. If he is given time and space to use the footy, I think he can be one of our best kicks. But that's really remains to be seen in that role that he's stepping into. It will, I guess, come with it a bit of pressure, or pressure situations where he does have to think on his feet and, analyze the best options in a millisecond. But I have a little bit of a doubt over him with regards to that. But I do think, as I said, it's kind of weighed up alongside of the fact that he can be a very nice distributor. So it's a bit of an each-way bet there. And I think at this current ownership of 2.2%, he does obviously come into pod territory. And it does mean that, if he is taking extra kick-ins, if he is being able to score as well as what, we all hope, he could be a very, very nice gem for your opening or starting team. But speaking of kick-ins, one of the key takeaways from Carlton's preseason clash against the Giants was, yes, that he did score 79, which is very, very good to see, but he only had one kick-in alongside Silvani, Cowan, and Doherty, with McGovern having 2 and Sard having 5, which gives a little bit of an insight that the club may once more, again, share the kick-in love in 2025. I think for me, my verdict is I'm not too keen on him. I do like the prospect of him, that he could, yes, potentially step up his game, and I expect that to happen to some extent, but I just don't know whether or not he's going to be able to elevate his ceiling enough to warrant selection in my starting team. As I said, those queries around his disposal, which can be very much Jekyll and Hyde, when he is given that time and space to hit up targets and teammates, he does look very, very good. But when pressure is applied, which will come in spades, as I said, in this new role of halfback, there are those moments there where I do think where he will spray it. And I think he did that as well against the Giants and even against the Saints in that unofficial practice game. So for me, he is a pass at this stage. And I am totally, I guess, fine with paying up for Hollands if he does start the season on fire to trade him into my team. But I feel more comfortable, especially considering he is a midfielder only, in passing him up to start in my team. And, we'll wait until he gets that defensive midfielder status. And obviously, key watch of him across the first 6 games of the season and assess from there as to whether or not he does warrant as a trade-in candidate. Let's move on to another Carlton player who I am very, very bullish on. And I know that hasn't really been spoken about much across any other podcasts, any other content creators. I've hardly seen boo about this guy. So I'm going to label him as my boy because I'm a big fan of him, having watched him firsthand as a Carlton supporter. But there are a couple of reasons as to why I am very, very bullish on this guy. And he's someone that is still in calculations to start in my team, believe it or not. And it is Cooper Lord. 253.8k, 2024 average 78.5, and does have the round 12 bye. Ownership at the moment is just 1%. So he's an uber pod and someone that I am going to hang my Carlton hat on and say that he is a genuine breakout candidate. So despite the awkward price point of 253.8k, Lord does present sneaky upside. He broke into the Carlton team to play the last 2 games of the 2024 regular season, scoring 69 and 88, both impressively from limited game time, giving him healthy points per minute of 0.8 and 1.2. And it's worth noting as well, his scoring increased when he was granted more CBAs as well. So a bit of a correlation there, increasing from 38% to 68%. And this does segue to the first big positive for Lord heading into 2025, which is related to increased opportunity. One of Carlton's main inside balls in Matt Kennedy, who played 23 home and away games, has now made his way to the Dogs, of course, which leaves a big, big hole in Carlton's engine room. And you'd say that Lord would be in direct competition with, someone else like a Jack Carroll in the past for that spot, but he too finds himself at a different team in St Kilda. And this all but means the navy blue carpet, I'll call it, has been rolled out for Lord to waltz into this vacant role, sidling up alongside the regulars of Cripps, Walshy and CERRA, to name a few. And reading into the minds of the coaches, match committee and recruiting team, the fact that they were more than willing to let go of both Kennedy and Carroll, it does, I guess, in doing so, massively thin out our contested midfielder brigade. All of that, in summary, indicates their expectation and high confidence that they have in Lord to make that step up. The second positive that comes with Lord is his style of play, namely the fact that he loves to tackle. As we know with the likes of Bond, Cherry and Steele, to name a few, it helps give a very high scoring floor. In other words, high minimum scores, which is SuperCoach gold and almost an instant cheat code, as it means they're less reliant on bulk disposals, marks, etc. in order to build a score, and does thereby elevate their chances of them being able to increase their ceiling scores as well. In the NAB League in his junior year of 2023, he averaged 5.7 tackles across 11 games and carried this form over into the VFL in 2024, averaging 5.8 tackles from 14 games before averaging 4.5 in his 2 senior games for Carlton. I expect him to play a majority of games in 2025. This is my summary here, and could be a sneaky cash cow with the ability to punch out some half-decent scores as an on-the-field option, given his contested game style and love for a cuddle. I think he is an incredible prospect. I should mention as well that his official preseason game against the Giants was very promising, with a score of 73, with 55% CBAs and 20 disposals. So all that for me screams, value. At this price point, I know he's priced at 253.8k, but what he can provide, if he can increase that scoring to, a 75 average, he's going to be a very nice cash cow and an on-field cash cow that, if they're punching out scores to that ilk, are going to be very, very handy, especially for those early season buys as well as cover if you have potentially Cooper Lord as a bench option. But that's, I guess, the one query that I do have over him. That price point makes him really awkward. You'd virtually have to select him as an on-field option unless you've got bulk coin to really afford to have Cooper Lord at that price point on your bench. Yeah, it's totally up to you. But he's one of the options, I think, that alongside another guy that I'm about to speak about in HUGO GARCIA, I think he's kind of neck and neck for him for a spot in the engine room in your SuperCoach team. So I spoke about as well, I should mention as well, with Janeth on the Swordplay podcast when we spoke about Carlton, and he was someone that I threw out there. And as well, you might have read in the Swordplay season guide as well. Make sure to get your hands on that. Check out their main website where you can purchase it. And I did a massive write-up on Cooper Lord, and that was the first time that I'd ever seen anyone chat about him. And I'm like, this is a bit of a gem here. I'm going to hang my hat on him, and he's going to be a bit of a diamond in the rough. So he is my boy, Cooper Lord. So very, very good option, and strongly consider him. Does play the first game in round 1 as well. So you'll be able to see whether or not how he performs and kind of pivot off the back of that. If it means that he's had a massive score, if he scored a 90 to 100, he might be a must-have at that price point. So you might have to sort of adjust your side to allow you to have enough money in the bank to then bring him into your team over the next couple of rounds after that before he jumps up in price. So something to consider with Cooper Lord. And as I said, I'm very, very bullish with him. Let's round things out with a bit of a quick chat on that man I spoke of, HUGO GARCIA from St Kilda, priced at 245.8k, midfielder forward, and 2024 average was a 45.6. Does have that favourable round 13 bye, which is another big tick for him. And ownership is now at 14.1%. So incredible jump there. And people are jumping on him because of what they've seen of him across the preseason. So in short, I guess with Philippou missing, Garcia's opportunity does increase, and he could be the beneficiary of those extra CBAs as well. And that transpired with Garcia being gifted the second most CBAs in St Kilda's official preseason match against Port, with a total of 72%. And he was able to score a respectable 71 from 18 disposals, but was still managed for minutes with 64% time on ground. Now, the question does remain, will he be the first to make way once Philippou returns? Because we all remember as well how frustrating he was to own in 2024, given that he was given the sub-vest in 4 out of his 8 games. So has he graduated to a full-time gig? That's my main query when it comes to Garcia, and kind of why I'm a little bit hesitant with him compared to, say, a Cooper Lord, who has, I think, that better opportunity for game time, especially off the back of, I should have mentioned as well, with Cooper Lord, with Jagger Smith going down, even though they're different players. Cooper Lord's more of an in and under, whereas with Jagger Smith's more of that outside type player, a bit of a hybrid. I do think the Cooper Lord will have increased opportunity compared to HUGO GARCIA, which I do have question marks over with regards to that. Scoring-wise, he's very similar as well with regards to Cooper Lord, and the fact that he loves to tackle, and it does build that nice scoring floor. So there are a few ticks when it comes to Garcia, and as I said, he's got that DPP as well, which is very handy as a mid forward. But I don't know if he is, someone that I can have the utmost confidence in keeping his spot in the team. So that's kind of the summary that I do have for him in saying all that. But with his ownership being now 14.1%, it does mitigate the risk a little bit. But again, his ownership isn't massive, so he is still a relative risk off the back of that. But I guess, at that price point, if he doesn't work out, you can always pivot to someone else at a lower price point, which now segues into the rookie side of things when it comes to midfielders. So we will be covering that in the next episode. So make sure to check that out because they are all important. Because as I said, if the likes of Garcia doesn't work out, if a Cooper Lord doesn't work out, you need to sort of pivot. And if you don't have money in the bank, you won't be able to trade up. You're going to have to trade down to a few options. So we will go through the juiciest options when it comes to rookies in the midfield, and there are quite a few as well that we will be discussing. So make sure to check that out because that does round us out on our discussion on all things mid-price midfielders. Hopefully there's enough for you to go on and do your homework on and help construct your teams. Of course, before we sign off, don't forget to check us out across our social channels on YouTube. Simply search SuperCoach Edge and you'll find us there. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell as well to be notified of when our content is up. Spotify, Apple Pods. If you listen to us, don't forget to give us 5 stars if you're nice enough, and a glowing review as well if you have time. On Twitter, you can find us at supercoach_edge. You can find myself at DamoJ88 and Liam at LiamEvans_95. Facebook, Insta, and TikTok. Just search Supercoach Edge and you'll find us there. Having mentioned Twitter as well, don't forget, as I said at the top of the episode, to check out our official preseason match takeaways, rundown, recap, whatever you want to call it. Liam has gone to the trouble of doing that, and it's compiled with stats. It's got a brief, rundown of the most notable players who perform well, ones to keep your eye on, and ones to consider in your starting team. So check that out, and hopefully there's enough there for you to enjoy. But that's it, ladies and gents. Thanks as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.